Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hi.
Today is a very important day. Today is the day, well, a day after, me and Doug both finished Final Fantasy VII Remake after who knows how many years. So we've got a ton to talk about. All of this stuff, I think we can kind of get into it really quick, but the game's fantastic.
Oh my god. Yeah.
The interesting stuff is talking in what happens, where this goes, how this plays with the story of Final Fantasy VII, how the game actually uses different scenes. So this is all going to be spoilers as we go through. We'll get to more end game stuff towards the end, but all of this is spoilers just as a forewarning to all of you. But before we get into specifics, I absolutely love this game.
Yeah.
It was almost exactly what I wanted, with one or two little minor things here and there, but it's the game that when I think about what you could do with Final Fantasy VII, this is what I would have wanted based on the fact that you knew they were only doing this part. It was just great.
I think it's my favorite game.
Knowing you finished it like 6 hours ago.
Sure. I mean, that's definitely, I'll say the ending did not color my impression of whether, I think I decided this was my favorite game about halfway through. And it was because it's just all of my favorite things from all of my favorite games in like a single package. Yeah, like we're gonna get into a little bit, but I think like stealing wholeheartedly from Yakuza, like taking lessons learned from Kingdom Hearts and then applying some like level of puzzle aspect of like RPG stuff. They
do so many good things.
It's just what the perfect game is in my head.
So just a couple clarifying things, because I think you brought up a couple points that are important. And I think one of these colors this game very differently. We both love Kingdom Hearts.
Yes.
And especially towards the end, this feels very Kingdom Hearts. So just throwing that out there, if you're not a fan of some of the Kingdom Hearts nonsense, like, you could have some issues with this, but
it's actually pretty straightforward, I'd say, until
the last hour and a half. And then it's like,
I was definitely in the boat of like, this isn't that much like Kingdom Hearts, and then like the last like 2 hours, like, okay, I can see the comparison.
There were a couple of scenes where I was like, there's one scene where Tifa and Cloud are sitting on a water tower, and it's literally, you can copy and paste the dialogue from Sora and Kairi on Destiny Island, and it's the exact same dialogue, exact same pacing, exact same tone, everything. But kind of the way I want to start with is just talking about the game itself, and we'll get into all the story stuff later on, but just talking about the game itself. One of the things that you mentioned already is you said kind of the walking around like Yakuza. So I want to start there because I think you spend a lot of time walking around towns, and that was one of my key things coming into this game was how are they going to handle those sections, because you don't see that in any of the demos, you didn't see that in most of the pre-release stuff. So when you say Yakuza, what do you mean? Because A, lot of people I don't think have played Yakuza, which is a travesty, and B, like, there's a lot going on in Yakuza. So what do you mean by Yakuza?
So the Yakuza games, what they do is they do this, a major component of the game is just walking around a town. So they make that town feel like it's living, it's bustling. There's things going on that you're not privy to, that like not even a part of the story. There's like little like literally just like walking around a city you would normally, like there's going to be people chit chatting that's totally unrelated to what you're doing. It might not. There's people like playing games. There's people doing other things. So when you're walking around a town in Final Fantasy VII, it feels like it's a bustling town with things going on. And it feels like I haven't played, so I don't play a lot of JRPGs, but it just feels like a lot of people are standing around waiting for you to talk to them. But in this one, it felt like a lot of people just doing their own thing. And it just felt like a living city. I think that was the thing that was just like so cool. Like I just like love just like quietly walking through, and you can complain it's like, well, they repeat their animations and stuff, but I think if you're just like walking through and just kind of like glancing at things as you go by, to me it's like that dream of like when I was playing Final Fantasy games as a kid, is like I want to explore this town. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a real living, breathing town that I was actually like going through and exploring. So that's what I mean by the Yakuza stuff.
And I think what does that is it does something that Yakuza does as well, is it has the little text bars on the side where like, and I feel like a normal JRPG, when you go into the city, you just kind of hear the like, until you go up and talk to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I was just talking to my friend about how sad it is that my cat disappeared. Whereas here you see on the side like, oh man, like I wish my cat's gone. And then even like after like the bombs go off, you hear people like, oh, what's going on? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? So you get those opinions just from that little scrolling text on the side. And I think that does everything to make this feel like that living city, because you're able to be privy to these conversations that may or may not be relevant to what you've done as the main antagonist or protagonist of this game.
Yeah, and it's wild. Those conversations like don't stop when another character is talking to you. Like they're still happening in the background, and like it's interesting because it's like how you would like pay attention to somebody during a normal conversation. If there's other people talking, you can pay attention to them and listen to what they're saying, but there's also side conversations going that you can kind of like listen in on as well if you choose to. I just thought that was like such a crazy thing that they're like willing to have people talking over the dialogue that they wrote, like for main story stuff. And I mean, it was cool. I mean, every once in a while, obviously, it's going to be like, oh, they're commenting on the thing I did. But to me, that was like less impressive, I think, than just the other things going on.
Well, and I think that what worked for me was that it was like, it almost seemed like depending on the events that you had done, that the amount of conversation about what you're doing like increased or decreased.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So like when you're just doing side quests, like, oh, never mind. They're like, oh, that's the guy, whatever. And it's just like, it's one little thing like, oh yeah, that guy was helping somebody. But then like after the plate falls and like everybody's like, oh my God, like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Like, what the hell's wrong with Avalanche? Like, why would Avalanche do this? No, and you're getting like everybody's opinions, and it's all focused on that one topic at that point. And then you keep going through the story and you get to like Wall Market, and it's, oh, nobody like, oh yeah, somebody mentioned it like once because it happened a while ago. We're in a different part of the town. All this stuff's changing about it. So just the way they use that dialogue plays so well into how this game is just a living world.
I think the game did like a really good kind of on that point. It's like every major plot point that occurs in the game, it feels like they took the time to think about, it's like, how would this character react? How would this world react to that? How would this person react to that? And you see all these like different reactions of different people reacting either stronger or less at different times. And I haven't played Final Fantasy VII in a really long time. And I actually only played about half of it, but I got through this section.
Everybody thinks it's only like 4 hours long. 7 hours long.
And I don't remember just in games in general where it just feels like everybody is appropriately reacting to the situation given their situation in the storyline or in this world. And that was just like absolutely crazy.
It works so well.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of we've talked a little bit about the towns, but I want to talk about a couple of the other really cool sites kind of that happen, just the things that you're looking at, because this game has a couple weird visual things that I don't really want to get into, but there's some just gorgeous scenes in this. One of the ones that keeps sticking out in my mind is Aerith's house.
Yeah.
When you first walk into it, and it's got the waterfall and the flowers, it's so perfect from like the little tiny picture I have in my head from seeing it in Final Fantasy VII, the original. Just that little tiny scene where you see the outside of the house and now being able to see it walk around, and you can go up to the balcony, you can look out. It's such a cool place to like just wander around in because it's so well designed. Everything just looks beautiful in that scene.
Yeah, that was honestly, I think I sent you a text like, I think this is the best looking thing I think I've ever seen in a game.
Yeah,
just that little area is just like, what is it looks better than the pre-rendered CG stuff. It's like, oh, this game looks way better than I ever thought it could be. There's certain scenes like kind of in that similar area, Aerith's church. I was like, this looks better than CG stuff I've seen, and I just I was like, my brain was just like trying to comprehend how that was working. There's a few things in this. It's like, is this a real time cutscene or is this like pre-rendered? Yeah. It's just like some of the stuff just looks so good.
Yeah, and I think just wandering around. So sometimes because you're underneath the plate, so just looking up at the plate sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And just seeing like there's detail work up there that you can kind of make out as you're walking around and you're looking. And the same thing when you're up, I think it's chapter 6 when you're doing the suns and you're just looking down on the town and you can kind of see like these people have their lights on. This is like a little bit more popular. You can see all these little fine details of just looking down from when you're doing that sun is really cool.
Just the suns thing was like just kind of a cool thing that I don't think was in the original game. It's just an interesting idea. It's like, okay, so we have this giant plate on top of this town. What else? What like? Oh, you would need to light the town like with an artificial sun in certain areas. So like, oh, they thought about these things. It just felt like they just took like a really intense look at and it didn't feel like, oh, just ways we can expand. It's just like, okay, what are other interesting things about this universe that we didn't talk about or didn't think of or this or that? It's like, okay, that's what I was saying. It's like they really think about how the world reacts and how the world could function. Yeah. And like, oh, it's really crazy with that skybox too. Like when the plate's missing, it's like,
and you have the one little like empty like sliver of
pizza
it.
slice. Yeah.
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 One of the other environments I want to specifically talk about is the Shinra HQ.
Oh, Jesus.
Which you get towards the end, and just walking through that building is one of the coolest buildings I think I've ever seen in a game. The differences between like the ground floor lobby when you come in, they kind of got like what you see in a lot of corporate buildings where you just have like these weird products sitting around. You have the cars in the background, which come into play obviously as part of the story later on. But at the time, you're just like, oh, it's just these cool things. You've got this really cool lighting. You look up, you can see all these floors. As you get up to the top, you go through that museum.
Yeah.
Which I thought was one of the coolest scenes in there, where it's like giving you this weird backstory, and you can kind of look around and see all these different things that hint at like some of the things that have happened prior to in this world. And it was just a really cool, well-designed building to be able to wander around in for 5 or 6 hours. And you really did have that feeling like, okay, here's the lab, here's the executive suites, here's the conference rooms, here's the lobby, here's this. And you could actually kind of see every little part you would see in a typical giant skyscraper that's a business.
Yeah. I think though, one of the things that I kind of appreciate about that, and like a number of other scenes in it, is that sometimes there's just an area just to walk around in, not even necessarily to have a boss battle in. It's like, here's just a cool area just to kind of like walk through. Not every area needs to be an arena. Not everything needs to have like a huge scene. It can just be two characters talking, and we're gonna have this really gorgeous environment. The Shinra HQ too. It's like it's interesting. One of the things that kind of stood out to me was like how you don't realize how strong and unique the original Final Fantasy art style was until I saw it like this, because the lighting just throughout, especially at Shinra HQ, I think was like kind of where it like exemplifies like the lighting is so stylized, like compared to other games where it's just like, here's natural looking lighting. In this game, it's like not natural looking lighting at all. It's like these like really highlights of like reds and blues and greens, and but it just looks like otherworldly, and it's like I think it gives it such a unique look that I didn't realize the original game had. But I think like the Shinra HQ kind of like exemplifies it because it looks like that corporate building, but it has this fantasy aspect. It has this cool lighting and stuff. The art direction just in this was like absolutely insane, and I think obviously like they had a good starting point, so they could just build from there. But I was just surprised how not generic the game looked ever. I mean, okay, I'll give you like sewers and stuff. Like we're not even talking about the sewers. Like I get it.
They were there. It's
fine.
Happened.
I think they honestly, I think boring parts of games make other areas more fun and interesting. But like it was just interesting, like how non-generic, like a lot of stuff. Like I understood that I was like seeing it because it was the old game, but it's like I've just never seen this in another game before. The Shinra HQ, like especially, but like Eris, there's like just a lot of areas like I've just never seen this before. It's just
and it's so crazy going off of what you see in the original Final Fantasy VII to where they got here. And I think you're perfect in saying that the game had a very unique art style, and taking it and putting all these like more normal areas, walking around the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Where it's just like that cafeteria looked like a cafeteria that I would have seen in Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. And they just mimic that art style so well that everything fits into those really just normal PlayStation 1 environments where, there's some detail. They look good, but there's only so much you could do in the late 1990s.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I was like, actually on that cafeteria point, there's parts in this that look like really realistic. Like to me, the cafeteria is like kind of like, oh, it's kind of a realistic looking cafeteria. Yeah. I think one of the big lessons learned that they took from Final Fantasy 15 was in Final Fantasy 15, there's some areas that just look like real places. They don't really have a fantastical aspect to this, but for this one, it's like, here's a kind of sort of familiar thing, like that cafeteria example is like, oh, it's kind of it looks like a normal corporate cafeteria, but there's this giant tree like in the middle of it encased in glass, and then like it's overlooking like a giant fantasy city. So it's this cool like juxtaposition of like, we can take these like things that we know of the real world and just like put them out of place in this like weird fantasy thing. It just felt like I was constantly in a fantasy game. It definitely, I think it did a better job of like, this is a fantasy set during present day than Final Fantasy 15 did, because Final Fantasy 15 I think just leaned a little too hard in being like, this is kind of the real world, and this one's just like, no, this is just a fantasy world that is set in the same modern timeline as we are.
The gas station in Final Fantasy 15 looks like the gas station. Looks like a gas station.
Yeah, it's like a little. It's not.
It didn't quite. You didn't do enough to make it not look like the speedway down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to just talk. I don't want to get too nitty gritty about gameplay, but this has come up a couple of times just in our conversation, so I kind of want to get into it a little bit.
Sure.
Specifically with bosses, but You at one point actually said, I don't understand how you're playing this game, so I recorded some gameplay of myself and sent it to you.
Yeah.
Because I kept saying,
very different.
Because I guess I want to hear how you played it, because what I did was pretty much in my mind thought, oh, it's like Kingdom Hearts, where I just run up and smack things, and then like occasionally I go, ooh, pause, all right, throw this, smack things, smack things. All right, pause, do this, especially towards the beginning. Once I got to the end, obviously, you've got to think a little bit more than that. But I want to know how you played this, because I'm very confused.
So basically, to me, if I used a Phoenix down, in my mind, is like if I needed to use a Phoenix down, I hadn't figured out whatever the puzzle was of the boss. Because like to me, like a Phoenix down is kind of like it's not failure. It's just like it's kind of to me is like the buffer to make sure you can still get past this section. But every time I use a Phoenix down, it's like I'm not getting something. There's some sort of puzzly aspect to it. So what I would do is like if I used a Phoenix down, I wouldn't just like reset. But if I noticed I was getting my ass kicked like really bad, I was like I could probably push through this, but I want to figure out what they're trying to tell me to do. So I go back and like refix my materia and stuff. There's a fight that you did not do that I think like totally exemplifies this is called the Behemoth Zero. And it's very similar to me like in the Kingdom Hearts Sephiroth battle where you just get your ass whooped. And you're just like, what happened to me? and then I went back. I was like, okay, he was doing this, X, Y, Z. Okay, maybe if I have materia and these buffs and that sort of thing. And then I would apply all those and then do the fight again and then just completely like just steamroll them. So I liked the puzzle. To me, it was like always a puzzle. Like if I'm not steamrolling the guy, I'm doing something wrong. And so I would kind of I would restart battles and stuff like because I didn't like it's not even like I don't like that uphill grind of like I can get through this, but I'm not doing it the way they want me to versus just like destroying the boss because I figured out the right sequence. Do you get what I mean?
Kind of, yeah. But that's so different because in my mind, I was just like, Cloud just attack. Like I picked up, I don't know what I don't remember the name of the sword off the top of my head, but it was the one that was like the big heavy sword. And it was
the
just
giant
like,
Japanese sword.
Yeah, and I just loaded like every time. I was like, ooh, you can upgrade your weapon. More attack. Yeah. So I just like basically set Cloud up to be Dante from Devil May Cry, where he's just in there like just smack, and then again used like depending on the party at the time, the other couple with just had a couple like barrier buffs and basically magic for when there was something that very clearly was magic will stop this.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I just pretty much just smacked at the things until they died.
I mean, it works.
It works,
okay,
and that's what's cool.
The thing the game doesn't quite let you fail ever, which is fine, I guess. Like I feel like in Final Fantasy games, you can really get yourself screwed over if you're not careful.
Yes.
And in this one, like I just had like 1,000 everything at the not 1,000, but I had like 50,
50 to 100 of every item. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just feel like the game like never let me. So to me, like the next thing for me was like figuring out the puzzle aspects, like what are they actually trying to tell me. So unless there's a fight that was just like really effing hard, and it's like if I'm using a Phoenix down, that's probably okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just a different way to play the game, I think.
For sure, but it's cool that I think both ways work.
Yeah.
Whereas you looked at it as puzzles, and I just looked at it more as like a straight action game with some cool turn-based elements thrown in. It's cool that it works. The one place where I think you have to be a little bit smarter, and I think this probably came for both of us, is those bosses. The bosses in this game are just insane. The one that stuck to me was Hell House. Like that thing like was a grind. I think I texted you and I'm like 25 minutes into this fight. And I'm like a quarter of the way through and you're like, do this, and this. I was like, I don't have those materials equipped. I'm just going to keep going. So I think the Hell House fight just in itself was like a half hour long. So it's just like, I'm just going to grind and we're just going to smack this damn thing until
it is funny. There's definitely like tricks to that one. Like if you load up with all the right stuff, I mean, it still takes a long thing to me. I honestly think that Hell House fight for like a number of reasons is like how they just absolutely nailed this remake because the gameplay aspects to me, the puzzle aspects of needing to do that. And the fact they actually just fucking included the Hell House. Like the fact that even showed up at all is like, I was just like jaw on the floor. I was like, they did not just do the Hell House.
it was one of those things that feels like it should be a weird side quest thing where you're like, oh yeah, like so and so keeps reporting that way off to the side there's this weird house that like keeps talking to him or whatever, and you get this weird like side quest thing that ends up with that fight. But it's just like, no, like you're doing this.
I was just more like, this is a thing that could have cut so easily. Like it's just we're not gonna do the Hell House, guys. We're not doing that. It's like, oh no, you're fighting like a small cottage for half a fight that turns into a robot.
So I don't want to spend too much more time on gameplay before we get into the story here, but
did you like the gameplay though? Like, how'd you feel about it? Just like,
I loved it.
yeah,
I think it's a great blend of what Kingdom Hearts does so well, which is just kind of that action combat that, let's be honest, you really don't have to think through too much.
Sure. Yeah.
With a good blend of an old school turn-based game, especially by the time you get to some of the end game fights in chapters 17 and 18, where you really have to kind of pause and go, okay, barrier here, Kira here, okay, let's do, you're going attacking, you're throwing magic, and you actually have to pause and you have to go through those steps, and every time that ATB hits, you're like, all right, pause, reset, hit everything up, okay, go for a second, okay, pause. And I think it's a really good way to do classic turn-based gameplay in a year where a game of classic turn-based gameplay would not do well.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think I like the tactical aspect. It's like, to me it was just like, this is why people like RPGs, because I don't like grinding. But I was like, I kind of get it. I kind of get why people like RPG. It's like, here's like the little setups and stuff that you can do. I like that it definitely felt like they split it too. Like, I had to be good at action games, but also had to be good at RPGs. I was like, I just felt that's like it's cool. It's like, I don't think most games don't ask you to be good at. But I don't think any game really asks you. Maybe the Tales series, but I don't play that one. But it's like, it feels like most of the time it's like we're an RPG, so you need to be good at RPG mechanics, or we're an action game. It's like, well, in this one you need to be a little good at both. I know that was really clever.
And you can definitely, I think, fight through it with either one. Where we were talking about the ways that we played it different, but it definitely, like Barrett's section, it's like, no, you just got to be able to shoot some things.
Yeah.
And then you get to like
fun. Yeah.
And then you get to the part where you're like, okay, like it's Aerith and one other character's like, okay, you need to be really smart about how you're using Aerith here, or you're just going to get the crap kicked out of you.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really good blend of a couple different things. I love turn-based games still. Yeah. So part of me is like, I would have been cool if it was turn-based, but I think the way that they did this, just it knocked it out of the park. It's great.
Yeah. I could block. I loved it.
That's all Doug needs is a good block.
I just need a good block.
So I want to get into the story moments here. So we could obviously spend probably 2 hours going like chapter by chapter and looking at everything, but for all of our sanity, we both picked out some key moments that we wanted to kind of talk about here. So one of the moments, and we'll go pretty much chronologically here. One of the moments that stood out for me right away is when Cloud goes to his apartment the first time, and there's that neighbor. And the neighbor's doing some weird things, and there's that weird vision of Sephiroth that happens right here. And then the neighbor comes out, and you see the number on his arm.
Yeah.
And Cloud has this like kind of weird reaction to it, and I think that's one of the first signs that this isn't a remake. That we're doing something very, very different. I saw that, and my first thought was, I think you see the ghosts or the whispers just after that scene.
You see it when you first meet Aerith, when she's like surrounded. She's like, oh my gosh, there's ghosts around me, sort of thing.
That came first.
Yeah, that comes first.
Okay, that comes first. Okay, so you see those, and you're like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then when you see that was kind of my first major inclination of like, we're not just adding these weird ghost things, but we're adding in this whole new thing. We're changing the story because, again, it's been a while since I played Final Fantasy VII, and it's not one of those games that I have the most vivid memories of. But in my mind, you don't know anything about the clones and everything until way later in the game.
Sure, yeah.
So just like introducing it within the first few hours, and you're like, okay, what? I really shouldn't even know about this till the game's done, because that's kind of what I did in my head a few times where things started popping up. I was like, I don't think I knew about this until like 20 hours in, and like 7 hours in, and I'm getting hints at this. Like, what's going on? Like, so I just think that scene stuck out to me right away as like, this is something different. What's going on here? And as the game progressed, they just added to that.
I think the one for me, that the thing that stood out for me was the and I were going back for a second. It's just the opening. The opening of the game is like, there's like, it was interesting because they hit it, because in the demo is just the opening of the original game, and this one they hit like a whole like, here's Midgard during the day and people living in Mid, and then doing all these different things, like really, really cool detailed stuff. And it's just like, the thing that I think that the game is really good at, like slowly revealing its cards, kind of like you're saying. It's like, oh, here's some ghosts. No, it's a little bit different. It's probably not going to be that big a deal. It's like, oh, here's the clone. It's like, well, that actually came a little bit later. It's like, well, wait, now we're doing this, and now we're doing that. And then we'll talk about the end where they like reveal their full hand of cards. But it is cool that they keep like dropping these like little bits in like of like you knew this. Like I didn't. To me, that really didn't mean anything because I didn't beat the original one. But to you, that was like a huge moment because you knew, and like you're seeing the visions of the future. I think the other thing that stuck out to me was literally the character's visions of the future.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which and I don't even know how I feel about that, because that still feels weird just because they start so early, and to be honest, they really don't do much with them.
Sure. Yeah, that's
they
true.
they really don't reveal anything about those visions. They really don't ever give you a hint of what's going on with Cloud and Sephiroth in this. You know there's some kind of connection by the end.
Yeah.
But for the way that they started, like, just jamming those things down your throat, like 10 minutes into the game, like, here's Sephiroth, look out. And you're like, who's Sephiroth? What's this?
I guess I was more thinking of like the stuff where like when there's a part like where Cloud actually sees the plate falling like really early on. Yeah. And to me it's the cue that like we know that you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think the game does that really, really well, of the we know that you know stuff. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, like the clone stuff. It's like, we know that you know this is important.
Mm-hmm. But we're not going to tell you why about it.
Yeah.
So a couple of other key moments that we'll go through here. So you mentioned after the first bomb was something that stood out for you as well.
Yes. Yeah. That scene, I think the one thing that was kind of weird about the original game, it's like we're a plucky group of terrorists, which is like probably okay pre 9/11. But now it's like a little bit weird. It's like they're kind of terrorists, and they show like that scene like following the reactor explosion. They do kind of, I think they soften it probably correctly. And that it's like it was actually Shinra who made a really big explosion. But I just thought it was like really crazy, like going through that. It's like, oh, here's the town reacting to what they just did, and what they did was a pretty bad thing. It's like it's actually affecting people's lives. And we had mentioned the suns, like turning off the suns. Like it's like a lot of it was just like, oh, I'm like doing things that are hurting people, and do I believe enough in their mission to go along with it? Was kind of like one of my thoughts like early on. They definitely I think they definitely justify a little bit more as it goes on, as they just make Shinra worse than them. But it's not like they aren't good. It's not like they're really good people. They believe in what they're doing, but what they're doing is like, it's interesting how it's like they're like the game's acknowledging it's like they're hurting people by what they're doing. And that was to me, that was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting perspective on this. Like we're still like, we're acknowledging that maybe being a friendly eco-terrorist thing is like a little strange.
Yeah, and I think your Yakuza style conversations that we were talking about play into that soul, because as you're walking around, you're getting other people's take, and even if you don't have that initial like, you're like, yeah, we got the corporation, as you're walking around, like, oh man, like my house and so many things, and like, what are they doing? Like they're taking this away. How am I gonna? And you get this real feeling of like, oh god, like. Do you believe it's like I got the evil corporation?
I think it's the player. I think they're throwing it on the player to like to figure out like, do you believe in what they're doing?
Yeah. How do you feel about this?
Which is really this game is like way more clever than I thought it'd be for like a number of reasons. We're not talking about the more clever aspects before, but we'll get there. Yeah.
I thought it was one of the parts that I thought was cool, and I think you kind of brought this one up too, is Jesse's house.
Oh yeah.
Not side mission, it's the main chapter, but where you go to Jesse's house, and I think this is again one of those points where it's like, okay, this one didn't feel like they were changing the game, but it felt like one of those moments of like, we're really gonna put some more into the aspects of the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII that just didn't exist. And we talked about that before, but just I don't know, that was a really interesting scene, in the way it played out. Where you have to like sneak in the house, and you sneak in the back door, and you see her like dying father there, and I think that adds to the Shinra evil, because he worked at Shinra and all this and just it gives you this weird feeling like that whole section almost made me feel like I don't know if I like what we're doing. Yeah,
because it's just like a residential neighborhood essentially. It's like that cool juxtaposition of like a residential neighborhood and like a Final Fantasy thing, and then you're robbing a house and stealing the key card off a guy who's terminally ill. It's like, whoa, it just...
But for your great cause against the evil corporation. So again, it's like that, like... And again, like, as you mentioned, as the game goes on, it very clearly is like, Shinra are just bad. Shinra bad. But that first probably 10 hours, everything you're doing feels like, I know that we have a reason, and I know that there's a goal here, but we're kind of going about it in a kind of evil way. We're not... And I think the player almost fits well with Cloud in this, because Cloud's just kind of going like, just pay me. I don't know if this is good or bad. Where's my money? I don't care. Just give me my money. And then as it goes on, he kind of slowly joins in and goes like, okay, no, Shinra are some bad people.
Yeah. It's funny. He never really believes in the life force stuff, though. It's just he realized he acknowledges how evil Shinra is. He doesn't really fall in line with like the life force stuff kind of thing. I mean, like a little bit, but yeah. I mean, real quick, like all the characters are like amazing. Like Cloud being Cloud being a punk was like pretty cool. Like constantly, he's not a main he's not a main protagonist you would have most games nowadays. He's just just a punk who's not very likable, and then who gradually becomes likable. It's pretty cool.
He works so well. I'm gonna go slightly out of order because I think this fits with kind of that making this real thing. One of the scenes that I liked, and it was optional because you could take the elevator or the stairs.
Sure. Yeah.
When you get into Shinra HQ towards the end, I took the elevator because I think it was like late at night, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta keep going. I don't have time. I know you're gonna do this. I know you're gonna do the stupid thing where I have to run up the stairs. I get it. Ha ha ha. Very cute. I'm not even gonna look at it. I need to go up the elevator. Let's get this thing going." But when you take the elevator, there's one scene that just sticks out so much in my mind, and that is when you're getting these people down and off. The first couple times, just there's guards, and then the next time it's like, just this employee comes on, and Tifa kind of starts saying like, "Man, like." There's real people who work here. They're just trying to do their jobs. They just trying to make a living for their family. Mm-hmm. And it's that, and this is chapter 17 or 16, I think. Yeah. And it brings you back to that first part of going like, sure, yeah, they are bad, but like, and you walk past like a room of people just doing their jobs at computers, like engineers, and you're just like, I'm gonna blow this building up. And it's one of those things that I don't think enough media does, where it's like, oh, that group evil, and it's like there's some janitors, there's some software engineers, there's some just receptionists, there's some people hanging out just working in this business because that's the business that hired them. And the company's evil, but really it's those like 8 people at that conference table, and then coming down, and it's just that elevator scene I think just really drilled it in, and it's something you don't see enough in media, where like you're affecting real people when you take down the evil corporation. Yeah. I thought one of my favorite scenes is when you're walking around the conference rooms and the people at Shinra Corp are reeling from the plate dropping, and they're just trying to come up with like emergency plans and rebuilding plans, and like they're talking about having lost friends, and they're talking about like it's not just there are very few evil people in the corporation, but then Barrett makes the point. It's like they're all kind of culpable. Like they all are. Like, they all have like I forgot his line. I don't know. There's so many lines that are like surprisingly good for a Final Fantasy game. Oh, for sure. But yeah, I mean, he's like acknowledging it's like they are normal people, but like they are culpable to this organization. They are a part of it, and it's just it's an interesting discussion. It's like you were saying. It's not they're right, they're wrong. It's like it's a discussion. The whole game sits in this weird gray area. Yeah. Which is, and then Final Fantasy games, like I don't think they do that, and I don't know if Final Fantasy VII particularly did that. I think they just thought about the story. I think this was my concern coming into this, was like the Midgar section is not long and not detailed. The Midgar section isn't the important part. Like I don't think Avalanche really even gets mentioned. I don't think Avalanche even gets mentioned really after you leave Midgar. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, that was just our setup. That's just how Cloud joins these people. That's cool. Whatever, that happened. Yeah. But this, like, because you have to dwell on it, you have to do a little bit more looking into this and how these things all work. Yeah. Can we switch gears and talk about Honeybee? Yep, I was gonna say. I feel like that's kind of the ending of the key moments. You got to talk about the Honeybee. So, wow. Chapter 9 is insane. Chapter 9 is probably one of the best 5 hours of a game I've ever played. It's one of those things that you know is coming, and it was one of those things where, kind of like you said, like the eco-terrorist works before 9/11, but then now you kind of got to play that out a little bit different. It's the same thing where Cloud just putting on a dress and doing that whole thing. Yeah. Fine, maybe a little awkward in 97, but now it's like you have to do something with this scene in order to keep it. Yeah. Boy, did they do something with that scene. Yeah, that whole scene, I think my whole expectation for that scene, I don't know. I don't think I had any. I knew Cloud was going to get a dress, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is there's before you go here, you need to practice how to dance. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And then they have a strangely well-responsive, interesting dancing mini game, and I was like, what is about to happen? And
Yeah, no, and like the scene is they have a musical number that is very long, maybe 5 minutes, 5 minute, 10-minute long musical number in which your main character dances, and you need to tap buttons to make them dance, and at the end they turn into a Disney princess. I definitely don't have the depth to talk about it, but I was just like, it was interesting that like they had like gay characters who were gay and flamboyant, and it just like absolutely worked in that setting. And it wasn't like judgmental or anything like that. It's just like, oh, this actually like super works with this in the context of it, and we're not going to make it like a hateful or gross scene. It's just like, oh, this is just a very flamboyant, like really fun scene.
Yeah, it's one of the most entertaining scenes in the game, and I think what you're saying is perfect, because there's never like, you could go so many different directions with character dialogue, with everything. It's just like, no, this just happened. Like, here we go. And now we're going back to the Dons, and there it is. And it works so well with every character. I think the over the top nature of that whole dancing number just helps exaggerate that whole scene and just make it this really, really fun, really exciting scene where you're just seeing all these different perspectives, and you're seeing all these different characters with different mindsets, different, like, obviously different feelings about what's going on. And it's just like, nope, this is just cool. And it's one of those scenes where I think no matter who you are, you're just looking on, that's just a fun scene.
Yeah. Oh,
it's just fun. It's so cool. It's so well done. You mentioned the well responsive dancing game. The first time I did, I was like, oh god, this is gonna. I was like, oh, I actually have to be good at this. Like, it just doesn't. I feel like most games where it gives you that weird mini game, it's just like, just hit the button, you're fine. This, it's like, oh no, like you actually want me to hit the button when I want to hit the button. So, I don't know that whole.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Oh no, that whole scene is, I was just gonna say that whole scene is just very cool. I will say, like, it's interesting though how that chapter like definitely turns like halfway, like after that point where it gives you this very awesome flamboyant scene into this like, oh, everybody's actually culpable to this really horrible thing that's going on in the town.
Yeah, and you get like the Don and that sleazy, and just everything once you enter there is just so gross and so sleazy, and it's like, yeah, again, everybody's culpable that you were mentioning before when we were talking about Shinra. It's like, yeah, this is fun and this is exciting, but you're also feeding into this horrible thing with the Don and everything that's going on there.
And, and it's funny when you go back there. When you go back there, it's during the day. Excuse me. When you go back there, it's during the day, and you realize it's just as trashy as any other place in Midgar. It's not like it's just all the sun bleach stuff. And honestly, it's like walking around Las Vegas Strip in the middle of the day. That's what it felt like. It's just like, oh, this is gross.
Yeah. All right, so. The finale, the last 2 hours.
Let's do this. So okay.
Let's start by saying, let's start with saying more or less the events of the original happened up until the very last part.
Yeah. Can we talk about the whispers and like how it kind of slowly?
Yep.
How it slowly kind of hinted that this might be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the whispers kind of get you there. You know, you see the president of Shinra, you see his son, you do all these things, and the way that the whispers navigate you there with Barrett's death, with some of the Avalanche people, the whole way through, these whispers are guiding you to the game you think you should be playing.
Do we have time to get into the whispers? Because I want to talk about the weird meta commentary of the whispers. Do we have time? I'm asking.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So the whispers. Okay. So the thing that is amazing about the whispers is that they basically personified the fandom as these ghosts that are literally haunting the game. It's this fandom that wants the game to be exactly how it used to be, and it's going to do everything in its power to push it to make sure the game is exactly like the original. And they use that as a major plot point, which is insane. It is like something that is like, I'm trying to think of like other media that have even done this, but it's just like taking that idea of making a Final Fantasy VII remake as part of the plot is insane. And then,
there's so little else that you could even do that with because of what this game is. Like, there's really nothing else on the level of Final Fantasy VII where you could go, we know if we change these 3 things, people are going to lose their shit. But guess what? We're changing these 3 things. Lose your shit. And guess what? We're going to knock you for it the whole way through, where you're going like, where the whispers are like, no, but this is the way we want to go. We want to go this. And you're like, no.
It was funny because when Barrett's death, my reaction was like, you can't do that. I was like, you are not allowed to kill Barrett in the scene. And then the ghosts come and revive Barrett. Like, you got
See, and I had the complete opposite reaction, I think, because I tend to prefer, like, I love the fact that this is almost more of a loose interpretation of Final Fantasy VII than a straight shot for shot. I tend to prefer that more. So when Barrett died, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You killed Barrett? This is so cool. Like, I love Barrett, but, like, at the same time, like, this is nowhere did I expect. That came out of left field. Like, it works, it fits, what? And then he came back and I was like, this is bullshit. But yeah,
but he had plot armor. Like, he has plot armor. You know he doesn't die there. And
that's why I liked it, because I didn't at this point, like, you got the tease of the clones coming. You got all these other teases. You see Genova there that you don't see there before. You get all these other teases where it's like, we're not doing Final Fantasy VII. Get it through your head. Like, this isn't the Final Fantasy VII you know and love. Yeah. We're doing our own thing. Barrett's dead, and you're like, oh my God, you really are just going wherever. So it's like, they kind of almost eliminated my thoughts of plot armor prior to that point, because they changed so many things coming into it that I saw him die and I was like, you did it. Like, you killed Barrett, and it's a scene and it works. And Barrett's main goal was to take down Shinra, and at that point
I did think about
Shinra's taken care of. Like, if you go back to Final Fantasy VII, that's his main drive, is like, oh, I fight for Shinra, I take down Shinra, I take down Shinra, I take down Shinra. And then once you leave Midgard, he kind of is like, I'm with you guys.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right.
So it's like, this fits. Barrett has accomplished his goal. Barrett's mission is complete. Like, you can kill him and it will work. And you get that victory moment of like, he did it though. Like, we took down most of Shinra.
He was definitely more active in taking out the president this time too. Like, that whole scene is like way different too, because the president's not just dead and killed by Sephiroth and then that's it. It's like, oh no, you actually, like, there's something happened that you didn't see, and then he actually has the opportunity to like kill the president.
You have the Batman hanging him off the ledge type deal.
But it was, I think the thing that I liked is like when they brought him back, because that wasn't his point to die. And then the whole rest of the game is basically, then the whole like lead up following that is like, you guys know about the plot armor. Now we're like literally going to kill the plot armor.
Yeah.
So it's like all those little Deus Ex Machina of like who's going to make it and who's not. Yeah. We're acknowledging that that's happening now, but once you finish this game, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah. And I think that the last line, and I actually meant to look it up before we started and I forgot to, was something like, the unknown journey continues, or the unknown journey will progress, or something. And you're just like, you don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, it was cool.
Literally, like, it just ends on this note of like, sorry, we're going to make part 2. That's why this one's called Remake, because this is a remake part 2. It's not a remake. We're doing our own shit. Yeah. Sure, you might go to the Golden Saucer, but maybe it's silver. Maybe you meet these other characters. Maybe they're already dead.
I think it's really funny. I think it's finally the like. I think the thing that's like kind of cool they revealed it. I think that would not have worked if this was a bad game, because it's like you guys like clearly aren't going to be capable of doing it. It's like, oh no, you guys should go do your own thing with this, because you clearly know how to keep the reverence with the series. You know what's interesting to change, and now you're going off and like charting your own path. Like, that's really cool. I think it's crazy that they like literally killed the fandom's expectations as like an insane final boss. Like, that's so meta. I don't know how to.
I didn't care for the final boss just because I felt like it just kind of was like out of nowhere. It's like, oh, big monster because we need a big monster.
Yeah.
And I didn't care for that, like, necessarily. I don't want to necessarily story-wise, because I get what you're doing story-wise, is that you're setting up this next adventure, but it feels like this very mild conclusion to that game where you're like, ha ha ha. It almost feels like you're landing on a joke. You know what I mean? You're ending on a joke where you're like, ha ha, you thought things were going to be the same, but they're not.
I think it's more like, it's like, I think mechanically and like design-wise, like, why am I killing a just giant monster? But I mean, it's the monolith of the insecurity of making a Final Fantasy VII Remake that you're killing. Is like, that's so much more interesting than anything else could have been.
And I agree, because the ending, because that was always my concern with this, is how do you end this game, because there's not really a good, like, the president dies, his son takes over, let's go, we're gonna go find Sephiroth to figure out what's going on, and that's the end of the game. So I do agree that you need to do something at the end of the game, but it just feels like you almost get so caught up and you're like, we're gonna comment on what you think, that we're gonna make the comments part of the game, which is cool with the whispers just kind of flowing through. But I feel like as the ending scenes of your game, I felt like the stuff with Sephiroth was kind of interesting, where he's talking about what's going on, but just that big random final boss, I feel like instead you follow Sephiroth through the portal and you just do the Sephiroth fight. You could have just left that part out and been like, oh, when we defeated Sephiroth, he was somehow connected to the Whispers. We don't necessarily know how, but that's what kills the Whispers, and now we can do our own thing. So
I think I appreciate it. I just like how it's more creative than anything else I would have thought of.
Oh, I mean, for sure, yes,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? Yeah,
and that and that's why I like it so much, because it's a creative way to go about doing something that I think if you make this a shot for shot, and at the end it's just like, all right, well, now we've got to go find Sephiroth, so let's go to these other places that we know are coming. Yeah, you're excited because it's a fun game. Whereas now I'm excited because I'm like, who knows what could happen? Like, am I going to still see the same characters? Am I going to go to the same places? Like, is what's going to happen with Meteor and with all the other stuff, like all this other stuff that's happening? Like, what happens? And that's the cool place to leave it. That I didn't think starting this game I'd be left with going, well, what happens when it's done?
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that. So like you're more excited with like because you don't even know what's next. Like you are pretty well versed in the game, in like the Final Fantasy game, but now even you at this point are like, I don't know what's gonna happen, sort of thing.
No, it's like maybe Zach's the protagonist of the next game.
Yeah, maybe. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think it's just interesting that they're like, yeah, we're gonna change it. I will say it was absolutely freaking wild that their visions of the future were. That like during that fight with Sephiroth, they're getting visions of the future, which are remade CG clips from the PlayStation 1 game of the finale and Advent Children clips, and it's just like, what on earth is going on? And the thing that's like really crazy is like that is the finale of Final Fantasy VII. From what I remember, I did see the final boss. I saw one of my friends beat the game. One of my friends beat the game, so I saw I've seen a lot of bits and pieces of it. But like they used a lot of like evocative imagery from the finale of Final Fantasy VII, and they're like, we're going to do the finale of Final Fantasy VII. It's like at a third of the core of the way through the game. Like that's the thing. That's like what is the finale of Final Fantasy Remake? Like what is that now? It's
exactly.
And you can't do this.
where do you go, and how do those things play into it? Because Sephiroth's obviously that was his plan, and then. Where does Sephiroth even come from? Like, did he know like the events that happened to the other one? Is this, and that's where you get into the weird like, please don't go to like 6 timelines and 8 dimensions, and that's my one hesitation.
That is the one
like,
thing I'm a little worried about. Yeah,
I feel like they're very much setting up for like, oh, not only is like Sephiroth a clone, but he can also there's clones of him, and he can jump dimensions, and he knows the future. You start getting into some weird things that I don't think lend themselves to good storytelling.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Zack living is like super interesting, but it seemed like Zack is living in a different universe. They kind of hint that it's like it's a different universe entirely, and it's like, okay, all right, we'll see. I think it's so interesting that they're taking the story in new directions. I would say specifically multiverse stuff is just done a lot these days for some reason. I don't know what it is, but like every story has like multiverse stuff.
Yep.
I think like just specifically them doing multiverse hopping may not be super interesting, but I don't know. But it's like such a minor complaint because that game is freaking amazing.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's one of those things where I'm not the type of person who's going to complain about that stuff, and I just I love the way that it's done so well that I get it. Like it's this treasured memory you have, whatever. Like, yeah. But at the same time, this is such a cool reinterpretation of that, and it used it, and I think it's one of those things where it changes it, but it also holds so true and does all of the things that original thing did. Yeah. That, like, I can't be upset with it because you do embody everything that Final Fantasy VII was. Mm-hmm. You just didn't do it the way that it happened exactly.
It is more creative than any fan could have written. I feel like
100%.
The version that everybody wants as a fan is just this, like, very boring... It's not even like a Resident Evil 2 remake. It's just a very straight remake that looks good. And I think what they did is just like, you know what? We can do something more interesting than that. And that's what we're going to do. And
they did, and it worked out so beautifully.
Yeah. So good. It's probably my favorite game.
I would definitely say it's one of the best games I've played. Yeah. Not quite sure if I'd go to number 1 yet, but
it's just Kingdom Hearts and Yakuza, man. It's the best.
Anyway, we are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to us wherever you're listening, and we will see you later.
Bye.